Hello everyone, and thank you for joining my educational channel for the Dr. Buzz Method. And the title of this is Positive Communication. So whether you're setting boundaries, you're giving directions, and even if you have to offer constructive criticism in education, because we're dealing with developing young people, we have to remember how important it is to use positive communication. Now, if you're old school like me, you grew up with old school parents, our parents didn't spend a whole heck of a lot of time, stopping the car to turn around to tell us what a great job we're doing, not causing any disturbances in the car while our parents are driving, right? Police officers don't pull over cars to tell the driver what a great job they're doing driving. I don't know, 2016 or something, Allstate came out with an incentive, or maybe it was before that, but I know it wasn't that long ago. And they started giving incentives for people not getting into accidents. And when you think about that, we're thinking of positive ways to get people to cooperate. So we don't want to bribe anybody. So I'm very big in communication. I'm very big in organic ways of reinforcement. I'm not a big tangible guy. The sweetest fish, the gummy bear, the points on the chart. It's needed for some students. But, people who start those types of reinforcement systems struggle sometimes to get out of them. And then children grow up expecting that they're going to get bribed or reinforced tangibly for everything. This is why using positive communication is so important. And this is my method. Whenever we're building a skill, we want to tell people what to do. When you're an old schooler, or you have parents who are tough, or you have parents that weren't skilled in something like this, people who are trained that way, who were in a culture where they were really communicated the most when they did something wrong, they themselves have a tendency of snagging kids and nailing them what they did wrong. Now, it's never a problem to point out what a child should be correcting, because any type of corrective feedback is improving a child's skill or function. However, when we're only honing in on the negatives, and we bring the negative attention to the child and only give them negative feedback, and we ask non-commonsensical questions, like we may ask a child, why would you do that? So let's say the child called out, and the teacher says, why are you doing that? Why would you do that? Technically the kid was called on. Do you want the child to answer that? Because he may say something like, well, I have a lack of impulse control, and when I hear a question that I know the answer, my excitability that is elevated by a rush of dopamine through my presynaptic to my postsynaptic cleft causes me to overreact, causes me to be impulsive. Technically, a kid could say that, and the adult would be upset, right? Because we would think it's a sarcastic, ignorant question or feedback. If we don't want those responses, which really aren't that productive, we have to watch the way we approach children, the way that we connect with them, so that we can allow ourselves, right? So we create this pathway to get in there so we can offer some sort of advice to the child to help them with their development for corrective action. So the kid who calls out without raising his hand. When we have set expectations in our class, for example, we hand raise in order to be called on if you have something to say, whether you're asking a question or answering a question. If the teacher is consistent with that and a child calls out and doesn't have his or her hand up, it's very simple to create a habit or a skill for that student by training them on what it is that they should be doing. What they should be doing is raising their hand. So we would say generally to the class, I would love to call on people who know the answer, but the only way I can call on anyone who may know the answer is they have to have their hand up first. Suddenly, the student who was calling out even by accident, suddenly raises the hand, at which time we can call on that person. When we call on them, we thank them. John, thank you for raising your hand. Do you know the answer to that question? John answers the question correctly. Thank you for answering that question correctly. That was great. That was a great answer. And then we'd say, and thank you for raising your hand. So we want to reinforce that behavior. When we reinforce it verbally, it really takes away the need to have to look for tangible rewards, all these kind of tangible reinforcers that children really start to up the ante on over time. Hey, if I'm getting on a chart, now I want gummy bears. I'm getting gummy bears, now I want candy bars. I'm getting candy bars, now I want money. So when you think about the value, we're talking about extrinsic is handing someone something tangible. Intrinsic is what we're building with using positive communication. Let's do another. Student is in class and a kid next to him won't stop making noise. And then he turns around and says, "Oh my God, would you shut up?" Now, technically, the kid who directed another to be quiet was frustrated because maybe he's trying to learn. So his emotions are justified. Now, he really isn't using the proper redirection or tactics for constructive criticism for the child who's making voluntary or involuntary noises in the class. But the first thing we want to do is correct the way that that child will speak to another. And it sounds something like this. "John," I'm going to validate him, "I understand that you're really upset with Steven because he was making some noises. If you're upset with him, share with him what is wrong, how it's making you feel, and what you would like him to do about it." So you would share to him, "Hey, you're making these noises. How's it making me feel? Because I can't pay attention. It's getting me frustrated. What would you like him to do? Could you please not make those noises? I would appreciate it." So we want to demonstrate to the child who's frustrated what the skill looks like so he knows how to manage or handle another who may be bothering him. If I do not give this child that feedback through positive communication, A, I'm not going to help him build a skill. 2, I'm going to frustrate him when technically he was a victim of another person's behavior. And then lastly, he may not want to talk to me again. That's never the goal. We are mentors. We are ambassadors. We're coaches. We are great role models for our students. Our goals are to build the frontal lobes of our students so they learn how to handle challenges. They learn how to make good decisions. We motivate them to want to change. So as educators, when we are positive meaning when we're using effective communication by explaining the tools and techniques of what to do versus telling the student in a very upset way what they're doing wrong, we avoid children being frustrated, even upset with themselves that they made a mistake. So sometimes we say, here's another reckless question, "How many times do I need to tell you not to do that?" So if the student was a loyal, responsible student, and he was going to answer that question responsibly, and you asked, "How many times do I have to tell you?" What if he said responsibly, 6? You have to tell me 6 times because 6 is my lucky number. It's the number on my favorite quarterback who plays in the NFL. 6 was my favorite birthday. And think about as an educator how frustrated you would be because the kid did in fact answer the question and he wasn't being sarcastic, or maybe he was, but he's answering. You asked the question, he's answering it. Whereas we would just tell the child what it is that you wanted them to do. So if you want them to perform a certain way, it's always best to pre-coach that expectation. Hey, everyone, I want to remind you as we're standing in the hallway that walking in the classroom, we keep all of our body parts to ourselves. That includes your hands, your legs, your head, your chest, all of your body parts. Thank you for keeping your body parts to yourselves. Johnny, you may start the line into the classroom. Now all of a sudden, Susie kicks Kelly in the shin. And they're fooling around, they were playing around. And we say to the first girl, listen, I just want to remind you that we keep all of our body parts to ourselves. If we say, hey, there is no touching, she may say, well, her shin touched my foot. And now the teacher is going to have to defend what the teacher witnessed, which was, no, your foot kicked her shin. Well, it wasn't a kick, and my foot grazed by her shin, but actually my foot was still, her shin came to my foot. I mean, what are we going to do? Hire a forensic team to come in here and sort this out? It's so much easier just telling them what you want them to do. We want to get them used to changing their behavior. This is prefrontal cortex. This is in the cerebrum of the brain. The prefrontal, short-term memory, impulse control, and all the development of forecasting outcomes. Like if I make this decision, there will be an outcome. So when you think about when we're grooming children, just like if you were grooming a quarterback to be a better quarterback, would you only tell the child what not to do? And if they threw an interception, would you shame them and make them feel bad about how bad they were? Or do you want to improve their skill so in the next game they continue to get better each game moving forward? We struggle with this, and it's really not that difficult to learn. It's difficult as adults for us to implement because many of us are just not used to that. We were not raised maybe that way, but that's not the children's fault. It's not the children's fault that we were raised by wolves and we were damned if we did it the wrong way because that's maybe the way culture was then. What we've learned is in order to build efficacy, strength and speed behind a function, particularly a skill, that you want to continue to reinforce the skill verbally through intrinsic reward by first prefacing what the expectation is, then catching someone doing it right to reinforce the fact that that's the way we want it to be. The way Johnny's do it, the way he raised his hand, the way he sat down, took out his books, the way that he walked away from that kid when someone was getting upset with him, that's how we handle ourselves responsibly. Now, think about it. If you were at IKEA, which is a store that sells home goods and furniture and such, could you imagine if you bought an IKEA desk, a desk that you're going to sit at and do your work, and the directions? You go to read the directions, and as you're looking at the directions, it says, do not put part A with part B. For those who don't know, IKEA, you build your own furniture. You have to put all the stuff together yourself. Sorry. Next, it says, do not put part A with part B. Do not put part A with part C. Do not put part A with part E. So you have to think. So I think that leaves me with D. So you take D, and you're thinking, I guess I put it with part A. So you know what? I can't figure this out. Let me look at the next direction. Make sure you take part C in your right hand to attach it not to part F, not to part A, not to part D. Oh my God, how do you fix this? How do you build it if it's only telling you what not to do? We want to share with people what we want them to do. Isn't that the way responsible directions work when we're building something? We're always looking at manuals and things. That's how we build skill. That's how we create efficacy, strength, and speed. If you took a medicine and it has great efficacy and you're sick, you want it to have strength and speed. When we remind students what they did wrong, how terrible it was they did it that way, and we don't even engage in an investigation of finding out why they did it that way. And we should ask them, so why did you do it that way? Why didn't you raise your hand? So now that we have established you need to raise your hand, and the child says, well, in my next period class, my teacher doesn't expect us to raise our hand. We don't have those expectations. Well, now it makes sense. It's like the mom is doing it one way, the dad is doing it another. When we have a school-wide model and everyone's doing it the same way, it builds efficacy and skill building. It creates better accountability where we can hold kids accountable more often. So, am I overwhelmingly catering to the kid, to the child, to the student? The answer is no. I'm building a skill. Even if you were training an MMA fighter to throw a stronger punch, this is the way you want to punch. We wouldn't just let them try it and keep telling them what they're doing wrong. We would show them how to do it right. I hope this makes sense. I want you to practice this with your own children. Ladies, practice it with your husbands. They all need coaching, right? And when you're practicing it, practice it with, honey, when you walk in here, I just want to remind you, our voices are lower because we can all hear you. So therefore, you don't just need to be as loud. And then meanwhile, let's say he's thinking, I don't know, I didn't think I was that loud. So we ask him, so why are you that loud? Person like me, I have bad hearing. I talk loud because I have bad hearing. So if somebody didn't know me, I'd say, well, I have really hard time hearing. They would say, well, my bad, I didn't realize that. And maybe I need a hearing aid. Maybe we need to reduce the noise in here a little bit so people that have trouble hearing can hear better. Maybe as a teacher, I should raise my voice to make it easier for you to hear so you don't think you have to reciprocate with a loud voice. You guys see how it works? This is a skill development trajectory that is extremely respectful, and it is also extremely accountable. But you have to do it with what do you want them to do first. Thank you very much. Stay strong in your teaching and keep following the Dr. Buzz method.